This is the Parallelogram Properties tutorial. Parallelograms. Parallelograms are any quadrilateral that has two pairs of parallel sides. You can see that indicated with the black parallel arrows here and here. So the top and bottom are parallel to each other, and the left and right sides are parallel to each other. Now there are some important properties of parallelograms that you need to know about. First is that their diagonals bisect each other. So what I mean is this. When we say diagonals bisect each other, that means that each diagonal is cut into two congruent parts. For example, this diagonal is bisected right here in the center, and it's cut into two congruent pieces, and so is the other diagonal. It doesn't mean that those diagonals are congruent to each other, just that they're cut into two equal halves. Now, the next thing we want to mention is that consecutive angles are supplementary. So follow me with this. Whenever you see two of the same color arrows pointing at different angles, those two angles that are being referred to there add up to be 180 degrees. They're supplementary. So, for example, let's begin with the red arrows. This angle up top that's indicated with the red arrow, and this angle that's also indicated by that red arrow, add up to be 180 degrees because they're consecutive, they're adjacent to each other. And the blue arrows also add up to make 180 degrees. Those two angles right there indicated by the blue arrows. The two angles indicated by the green arrows also add up to be 180 degrees. And the two angles indicated by those two thin black arrows add up to be 180 degrees. They're supplementary as well. So consecutive angles are supplementary. Also, opposite sides of parallelograms are congruent, as indicated here by the red tick marks. And last, but not least, opposite angles are congruent. So, angles opposite each other in the parallelogram are congruent to each other. And you can see that here by the red tick marks that have been established. These opposite angles here and these two here are congruent to each other. So why don't we review a few practice problems so that you get an idea of how all these important details play into parallelograms. Let's begin with this, for example. If I told you that this side of the parallelogram had a length of 30 meters, what would this side of the parallelogram's length be? Well, because opposite sides are congruent, it would also be 30 meters. And what if I told you that this angle right here was 110 degrees? What would the measure of this angle be? Well, because opposite angles are congruent, this would also be 110 degrees. And if you knew that this top angle on the left were 110 degrees, what would this angle be? Well, you would know that this angle would be 70 degrees, because consecutive angles are supplementary. And lastly, if we had a diagonal running this direction and another diagonal running the opposite direction from these two vertices, and I were to tell you that this portion of this diagonal had a length of 10 meters, what would be this length? Well, you know it would be 10 meters long as well, because diagonals of parallelograms always bisect each other. So keep in mind how these things relate to each other, how these important details of parallelograms can help you solve for missing pieces of information in parallelograms, because that's what all the following problems are going to be like. Go ahead and take a look at the problems that come along with this tutorial, and you'll get some really good practice using these details to solve for the missing pieces of information in parallelograms.